So we have some beautiful shells, which is a really lovely topic. And you could do this in any medium. I'm going to do it in watercolours just because the colours lend themselves you can put a bit more pigment in or a bit less and water it down. I may go in with a little bit of watercolour pencil as well, we'll see. So as always with watercolour, we tend to, in each section, work light to dark. Any really light areas of white, we'll have to reserve those. Or if you feel it's difficult to reserve it, you can, take a bit out with a bit of tissue paper as you're doing it. However, that's that you have to be really fast with that. It's a very hot day here today, like the hottest we've had. So everything is drying incredibly fast. But we just have to go with that's part of when we're creating part of just going with the environment. So when it's cooler, it'll stay wetter for longer and we have to then wait for it to dry. So the key I think tonight is to keep it moving. With as always with watercolor, we can put in a little bit of some controls, but also it can sometimes run out of a little bit of control as well. So that's fine if you wanted to. Now you can go in and draw in with a pencil if you want to. I might just do a really loose line, or you can just go in with some paint. So I'm going to go in. I'm just making sure that my shell takes up a similar amount of space. I'm not really worrying too much about these outer lines here. I'm going to do most of it with paint. All I'm getting is this little spiral. What we can do with shells is use, contour lines and things like that. That really helps to create the shape. I'm going to just give it a little bit of a shape here as well. So it feels like it's almost like a bit of a snail shell, doesn't it, really? And you can go further and put contour lines in and things like that. I'm not going to do that. I know you can hardly see that. That's fine. That's the point. It really is just a very light outline of the curl. That's it. I could move that in a little bit, I suppose. And the key is really, if you're doing anything in pencil, to do it nice and lightly. So you can go as detailed as you want and put loads of detail in, or as light as you want. With this one, there isn't too much going on in terms of it's beautifully simplistic, which was what I was just saying, that sometimes we like to do something more complex, and sometimes we just want to lean into the beauty of the simplicity of something, which is what I'm doing this evening. So I'm going to now think about, I am going to get just a little bit of an outline going on here. We have got shadow lines going in there anyway, so I'm going to go in. I'm not going to go in really dark just yet. I'm going to start to mix it. But the beauty of shells is, you can water it really down with lots of water and have it very watery, or you can have it more intense. It's entirely up to you. As we've discussed before, that is completely your choice and down to style. There's no set way of having to do them. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my palette over. I'm just going to mix up some colours. And if you have only a few colours in your set, that's fine, because you can use your blue. And I would go for something more cerulean. Got my tester here just to check it as I'm doing it before I go in with it. Let's see, that's a bit cerulean there, yeah. So I'm going to use cerulean blue, which leans towards, it's a bit warmer, isn't it? It's a bit kind of heading towards green. But the other thing you can do is if you haven't got that particular colour, which often we don't, you can just go in. I'm going to go and add some greens. I might add like a touch of emeraldy green in there. I'm going to keep testing till I'm happy. I also need to water it down a bit as well, because I'm going to try and start light. And again, we don't know how much we need until we just I tend to test an awful lot more in watercolour. I'm just going to add a little bit more emerald green in there. Let's try that one. Oh yeah, I'm liking that now. So, and these are totally different colours to what I used this morning. So you can either mix them all up, or you can just kind of go in with one colour if you want to start with and then use them. So I might drop in some blues, some ceruleans. I'm going to bring some cerulean blue on the other side here. Because I may drop in some ones that are just a bit brighter. I may even try, usually we have one or two in a set. I may even try going in with a different blue. I'll try an ultramarine blue and see if you mix that with another colour, like a greenish colour, what that will give you, and see if you've got some kind of a contrast. But again, we can make up these colours of these shells and go with our artist impression. It's all about our choices. You're the artist. You shall decide. That's the joy of it. There is not one size fits all. Okay, so I'm going to use that as my darker colour and that one as my lighter colour. Got this one as well. Just to start with, I haven't thought about, like, there's a few little warmer tones in there. There could be, maybe they're a bit more water. Thing is, it's drying that quickly. I could perhaps mix up some almost like ochre, but a bit brighter. So I might take a bit of a yellow ochre and just test that. Yeah, that's quite nice with it. You can also pastelize some of the colours by adding a little bit of white, should you want to, or you just water them down with water. Some colours, you know, if you haven't got like a pinky colour, some reds won't mix all the way down, so you might be wanting to. There's also these lovely kind of silvery grey colours in here, just a few flecks of this. But I may add just a touch of brighter orange in there, just to lift that, and then just thin that down. So we're testing these. Whichever one you decide to do, there's some beautiful ones. It's a nice night to explore and just switch our minds off from the heat as well. And then there's these lovely flecks. So I'm just really kind of going into a deep observation to look at what colours I can observe, and it almost feels a bit greyish in tone to me, but you know, a little look at, see what you can see. I could even go in with my pencil. So you don't have a grey, you can also think about using if you had Payne's grey, that's another colour you could try. Or you could just try a little bit of black and white. You don't have a black or a Payne's grey that goes right down. I'm just gonna see what that is. I'm gonna try and water it right down, see what happens first, see if it goes into this kind of grey colour. Sometimes they do. That's quite pale. I'm not sure it's going to be exactly what I'm after, but we'll try. That'll be okay. And again, we're going to have to like let some areas dry before we work in, but I'm going to go light to dark. So I'll probably just start with this kind of lighter one here, just to get some of this. Actually, I may go even lighter than that with just a really light blue. And water that right down. Let's see if I add in a bit of ultramarine to here, what that will give me if it's really watered. Not quite soft enough. It's almost midway between the blue, up there, between the blue. Lift out my palette a bit. Midway between the grey and the blue. Some of these areas at the back, so I might just try that. Just try and mix in a tiny bit of that. See what that comes out like. Oh, yeah, that's quite nice. Actually, I'm going to go with that one. Don't really know until we try it, and as I said, it's very experimental, which is lovely. And we may have to, like, as I said, we may have to add quite, you know, have plenty mixed up if it's drying really fast and we can't kind of mix it. But what I'm going to do anyway is, this is quite light going around the back here. So I'm just using the tip of my brush. The beauty, the thing I really enjoy about watercolors is how you can move that paint really quite seamlessly around. That's just really nice. Obviously, I'm just being mindful. There's some lighter colours on top, and I would be careful to leave those out. But I just want to get, just a sense of, there's another little bit here going over the top. It's even paler, so I'm going to water this bit down a bit more that I've just got. Go over the top with it. But I'm going in really loosely. And then you've got the next bit that goes in over the top there. I want to just add a tiny bit of blue to that actually, because at the front, that bit over there is only shadow at the back. But I'm going to just put a little bit more warmth, just with a tiny bit of cerulean over these bits that come over here. And then there's a lot of whites in here as well. So the reason I'm getting this down purely is just so that I can get kind of working within a framework there. So these darker bits, I'm going to work over the top once I've got the nice colours in. So I'm just playing with some of these colours. And I'm just going to work round in each of these sections. You can put a section as well if it helps, with what you can see, to put that in. That's absolutely fine. Just go without that moving. So I'm letting that kind of go into a little bit into it because it's not going to cause too much of a problem. The only thing we might get is, some overlap cauliflower lines because it's drying so fast. But I'm not worried if I do. I'm just being mindful to try and leave some of the whiter areas out where I can see them. So I'm just going to go in with this really washy colour, and then I'll start to pick those out. And that's all we can do. We'll just drop some dark colours in as we want to. So while you're working, I mean, this is literally drying as I'm going. So I'm going to have to wet a bit of tissue. I'm just going to pull out, make that a little bit more mottled like the shell is there. The other thing is you can wet the paper first if it feels like it's easier. But if you're trying to keep some of it a little bit damp, try just going in with a flat brush and popping some water in. But this works lovely with pencils as well. You can get like the coloured pencils all penciled in first if you want to. So we're just building up this lovely picture with some lovely tones all the way through. And then just within this little section here, I'm going to start to maybe drop in some slightly darker ones. Now, again, if it may run into the other areas. We can only just try it, and if it does, then we have to stop. If we don't want it to run, stop there. And if we don't mind, then great. We're just darkening each little bit as we're going through. Just dropping some of these colours. Really lovely to play with all these fabulous colours as well. Some that we just don't get out of our palette very much at all. Then some darker ones, just dropping those. And, some of this is down to our own interpretation. We might want to pop a little bit of a darker marking where it isn't, and that's absolutely fine. There's nothing to stop us just going for it. Keep going around with it. I'm looking here because we get a bit of reflection off the top, which is what we'd expect. We'd expect these colours at the top to where it hits the top to do that. And it won't feel very defined until we go in with a bit more of a shadow anyway, but I'm going to do that over the top. So same with you, don't worry, you can darken things off as you go really nicely. I'm just dropping things in now. Quite a lot of liquid, so we'll see what happens. But I need to just have a little think about, the edge as well here. So what you can do as well to create a bit of that bottom edge, if you think, oh, I can't see where things are, is just get a shadow in. So whether it's kind of a Payne's grey, whether it's like a pink colour, whatever colour you want to go in with there, whatever you see. You can just pop that underneath. Might just drop in a tiny, I don't know why I'm seeing a bit of pinky colour in there. Drop a bit into this grey. We can just change the tone of something like that quite easily. And then what I can do is create the shape of the shell. And then just create a little shadow underneath. And that helps us to see the bottom of the shell, especially when we've got a white edge. And then make it a bit lighter. A bit more watery. And then again, underneath, you don't have to do this till the end actually, but I quite like to just see some of that definition there. So wherever I can see a slightly darker line there, I'm going to make that a bit darker, but not really harsh. I need to test this, make sure it's not really dark. Still needs to be watered down, just slightly darker than that. So where you get like might need to let it dry actually. bit of a darker where there's a, you know, there's more of a depth, an area of depth. Just drop your shadow behind it, and then it'll just pop forwards a little bit. It's amazing how that does it. And as I said, I prefer to get that in earlier, and then I can see the shape emerging. You want to soften anything down, soften it whilst it's there. Make it a bit and come out a little bit, dampen it off with a bit of water. There we go. Just keep working your way through. I'm just going to let mine dry slightly so I can come on to the next area in front without that really bleeding a lot, because I've got some lighter. It's what we tend to get, you know, little bits that stick up that are lighter and then the shadow underneath. So I just want a little bit of light around there before I go in with the darker ones. I'm just going to let that dry mo. Before I go back in. So I'm still using the same colour palette here. I might just darken off a few of these little areas while I'm waiting for that to dry here. It's drying on the palette. So light between, light go between. This one will transform a bit more when I've got these stripes going through. So you can either wait, just get the rest of it in, or if you want to see a bit more progress, depends how you're feeling on the day. Let's see what I've got. If I went in with a pencil, let's have a look. This is a watercolour pencil. I'm just going to try in here, just see if I'm testing it here, just to see with the pressure. So if I add that much pressure and then I go over the water after, I mean, you don't even have to use water on these, to be fair. I go over with the water. What does that look like? How dark is it? You know, so it just gives us an idea. Or if I go really lightly. So we just got an idea of the pressure to put on so that you know, we can decide. And also, you know, I've got limited palette with my pencils, so I might go for one that's slightly warmer underneath. Another brown that's maybe that's a bit too dark, but slightly warmer. No, I'm going to go for a reddy brown. And what I can do is just practice putting that and overlaying another colour if I want the two colours over the top and the pressure as well. Work my brush in and see if that gives me the colour that I want. So I've got more brown on there than grey. So if I did it the way around, let's see. Grey, that's brown. So we were just experimenting even with watercolour pencils, the amount of pressure that we've got. Yeah, I quite like that combination. Um, so I'll see if it's dry enough. I'm just going to make some little marks on here. And again, it's your artist's impression, so don't worry about every tiny little mark unless you're really enjoying getting into that detail, but it's your impression, so there's no pressure. If you love the detail, then go for it. A little bit of brown on there. I'm just making little marks. You can do dots, you can do anything you want. And as I said, you don't even have to blend these in. You can leave them as they are, entirely up to you, your choice. So add a bit. So I'll know if it starts running into the paint underneath and going a bit muddy, then I have not. But I'm not overworking it because I don't want to lift off too much the colours, but just leaving it a bit. I kind of like them kind of move about a little bit just so that they feel natural and they're not like one big line. We do that with a paintbrush as well. Just allow yourself to be sucked into all of that lovely mark making. And all the way around this side as well. But then think out what I'm going to do actually is just add a head, just add a little bit more depth definition behind here, even if it's in a lighter colour to start with, so that I can see where the next sections are coming into. So I'm not just getting lost in one area there and losing shape. Going lightly, we can darken any of these up, which is a good thing. Bring that down there. Just coming a little bit. So all the time, we know whichever section we're working on, we're just getting a little bit more information in there so we can continue and do what we need to do. And then we can go back and just try and have a little look at the shapes that are being made, etc. And this needs a little bit more. But by working in sections, you've got like a chance to kind of get that, especially when it's really hot, get that little bit done first, because it dries so fast, it's difficult to get big kind of coverings down. Nice. Obviously, we're starting to see, you'll start to notice the darker areas between, etc. So for the darker area, then you can drop that in and get a bit more shadow. And then, we can continue on with the next colours. I'm just going to take a little pause there. So we'll keep going. We'll work our way through these little areas here. If you ever want to lift anything out, if it's still wet, damp enough, you can just gently go over it with a clean brush, but it might not be, it might have already set because it's so drying so quickly. So I'm going with these really light washy colours. It's very light here, isn't it? And then as we get through to some, you can just kind of make some brush marks, like push the tip of end of the brush backwards and things like that to kind of create that. Or just use a little flat brush as well, just to create that kind of a ledge feel as it's going up. Darker colours just create a bit more depth as well. And you have these lovely colours. And it's getting lighter as it comes into the centre part. So obviously that's kind of each of these sections are sticking out, it's catching the light as well as the patterning on it. Not quite as intense. Where it's like just keep a really light wash going through there. Building up much darker down here. And again, this is kind of in the shadows, quite a thick, deep area of the shell. So we can go in deeper with those areas there. Between. at the bottom, particularly, you know, where they kind of disappear away, it helps to create that depth. Whichever shell you're doing, you know. It also might have some patterns going across that you can look at as well. And then around, you know, around the shell as well, where there's some depth behind it. Wherever that might be on yours. There's quite a lot of colour. It's saturated quite a bit of colour there, and a bit more maybe than I wanted. So I'll see if I can pull that out with a bit of tissue with water on it. Just here. Well, it will have to stay. Sometimes you can just dampen it and lift it. Okay, that's coming out better, sorry. I'm not going to rub it there because it'll just scrape the surface off, which is not what I want to do. There you go, that'll be fine. And then again, just keeping going with those patterns that you've got. Actually, because I'm putting this on now, I'm just putting it nice and lightly. Because it's still wet underneath, it's kind of creating a damp. I don't tend to say generally, you know, do it whilst it's damp, but it's okay. You might find you've got some that might come across the shell, which create this kind of contour lines across as well, which is quite interesting. So you can almost make the shape of the shell going over. That helps a little bit with The contour lines shape the shell a little bit as well to make it less flat. Getting some depth underneath this shell here. And then we now just working out all the little kind of little shapes you can pop in. With little marks with your pencil or with your brush. You can do this with a brush as well, of course. I might even going with a darker pencil here, so I'm quite enjoying moving the pencils. And this is the thing with, I think, sometimes how things emerge. If you're really enjoying using another medium, then just use it. I'm not a purist at all about how things are done. Things are techniques of me moving on all the time. I'm just pulling this, like making this contour line round. Helps where the dark shadow is going to make it a little bit more rounded again. This adds a little bit of something. And then we've got obviously creating some definition in there. I'm just going to pop these little darker areas in before I go in. And I know I say, you know, work dark lighter to darker, but this is the darker edge down here. So I'm going to finish this little bit around there. And it'll give some real definition in the middle. We can make that pop forwards then with some of the features. Just really enjoy doing that, you know, getting sunk into it. Whichever shell you're doing, it's just, you know, creating enough depth with the shadow with watercolour. Because I can't really see, there's no edge to it. It's just, it's part of the process of how we can get that to happen. And then I'm just going to pop a little bit of shading with back to watercolour because I'm really enjoying doing that as well. So I want to get some light contours first in there. So I'm going to go get this grey colour that I started with. Really check the colour again. A little bit too dark. Get nice and light. Add more water. I'm just adding water, that's all, into the darker colour that I have the grey. Getting that shadow in on here. Bring that shadow over, but I'm watering it down a little bit. It's kind of going into a bit of a blur here. Now I'm just going to find where the tip is, where this yellow colour is, and just check that this is not too bright. Okay. If you're not sure if something is too bright, just water it down. So I'm going back to this first colour I mixed here. And it's gone a bit, it's gone a bit hard because it's dried. So I'm just going to water it back down again. Pop that in. It kind of gives me a point, a focal point as to where to work out for as well. So I want that bit to kind of stick out. Make it slightly darker, just. Mm. I need to take a line out between here. There's a bit too much hot water out if I can. It's very, very honest. I'll just pop a bit darker, one right that's particularly darker. Um, just mopping up a bit there because it's run. I'm wanting to keep that in the same area. Bring a bit of this colour in. So then we're just tightening up on anything. Don't really want to drop any extra. There's quite a lot. It's quite heavy in there. I think probably if I was to change that, I would just take a bit more out, but that's fine. It's dried already. Dried quite quickly. That's fine. I'm not too worried. It's just a point for me to think about next time I'm working in this heat. Probably, as we do. Okay. So, just have a little look at your composition as you go in, and if you think you're happy with it, that's great. Don't want to move anything, that's also fine. Do that. Want to darken anything? Usually go through and just check is there any areas that you would like to darken a bit. And then we've got our artist impression, and we can sit with that or we can change it slightly. It's always a choice. Just kind of blend these two colours a little bit. I'll just bring a small amount of colour through. A little bit of darker one onto this edge here. But I think I'll probably leave that there and just come back to it, have a look, in the morning, because, sometimes we can just continue on and overwork it. And if we're not, if you're thinking, oh, when should I stop? Then probably that's a good time to stop with it. But you can do lots of these little studies. And just each time you do it, you'll see something different in them. Really enjoyable. Really nice to do. I think if I was to do one thing slightly different, I'd make sure there's enough light through here. It's gone a bit dark. I think it's probably a bit too late because of how hot it is. If it had been less hot, I'd just whip that out of there. Take that colour out. But it's drying so quickly that watercolour is much more difficult to, lift out when it's so hot. Yeah, a little bit. If I don't, there we go. That will be absolutely fine. So I hope you've enjoyed that. So there's not really a border on it, just a little rain. And just enjoy exploring it. I mean, that's I think what it's all about, really, is the exploration of all of the colours and the shapes and the tones. Because there's just so many fabulous patterns on these shells when you really start to look. And the observation part of it is one of the really great ways of, learning form and shape and tone is just to be watching. So I'll take my final pause there, and I hope that's been helpful. But keep painting.